if you know exactly what you want more of and you talk all about it in your case study, then the people who like that are going to want to book with you. So the person that wants hands-on when you don't, like they want the 6 to 8 week project and you're like, I do it over a week, they're going to be repelled, and that's good. You want the people who love that to be attracted and be like, yeah, they're the one for me.
Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hey friends, welcome into the show. This is episode 317, where you are in for a treat in this one, my friends, because we're going to dive into a topic that I dare say is honestly one of the most important things you can do to continually land web design clients. And that is to have case studies, and more specifically, share client results in your case studies. Because one thing I've learned over the years is that one of the easiest ways to sell is to show results, because people, especially if it's a service, they want to know results. They want to know what they're getting into, and more importantly, what they're going to get out of this deal. So if you can share results by way of sharing a case study and a success story from your clients, it is a sure way to get more clients and make more money for your web design business. The tricky part is, though, how do we create case studies? Well, for that, I'm so excited to bring on Sarah Guilliot, who is a copywriter and brand messaging specialist and web designer who knows a lot about case studies and how to format results into success stories. And we dive deep in this one, all about case studies, getting into how to conduct interviews to actually collect case study information, how to create a story based off of client results, when and where and how to put these on your website, whether case studies should be like blog posts and success stories, or whether they should be on portfolio pages, how to market and how to use case studies to actually market your business. All that and so much more is covered in this episode. Sarah really has some unique and interesting perspectives here. So I'm really excited to help you with crafting and creating case studies of your own, again, to help you build your web design business. You can get all the show notes for this episode at joshhall.co/317. There's a full transcription there with all the links that Sarah and I talk about. And to connect with Sarah, go to her website at sarahdesign.com. Great URL, by the way. I can't believe she was able to lock down that simple and concise URL, sarahdesign.com. Go check her out over there. She's also got some resources we're going to touch on later for VIP days, especially those of you who are into web design, copywriting, and messaging. So all the links will be at joshhall.co/317. Without further ado, let's talk case studies, how to create them, where to put them, how to make money with them with Sarah Guilliot. Sarah, welcome to the show. So good to have you on. So excited to chat with you today, specifically about case studies. I know you're a copywriter at heart now. So first of all, thank you so much for taking some time to chat today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I've been listening for so long. It's kind of surreal to be here.
Well, I'm so excited because we have a lot of mutual friends and colleagues. A former member of Pro is one of your good friends. I found out before we hit record here. You've been in Sarah Massey's program, and Shannon Mattern, a good friend of mine, and her program. So you obviously have some incredible training and skill set behind you. Before we dive into case studies, which I have so many questions about, what's your superpower? I know you're all about copywriting now. You're a former designer, but what would you say your superpower is?
Yeah, I'd say I have a lot of empathy, and I have an ability to, get on a call with someone and read their body language and really get to the heart of who they are and what they're trying to say. So like capturing their voice and just getting that undercurrent, not the surface level, but like the deep, the deep parts of people. So I'd say that's probably my superpower, is pulling out the real you in a conversation.
So let's just dive right into case studies. How does that apply to, like case studies, testimonials, success stories? I've found that to be one of my favorite new things with collecting testimonials for some case studies and success stories I'm putting together is not the surfacey stuff and trying to get past the I love Josh's course. I appreciate that, but I want to know how did this impact you? Is that kind of, when it comes to case studies in particular and success stories, is that the kind of thing you look for? Or what are the things that you look for that really get
Yeah.
the true meaning behind it or out?
Yeah. And like, I think case studies can be kind of scary for people to think about doing because they're like, I don't know. Sometimes you can send those testimonial questions to your client and they just give you a couple sentences. Sometimes you can get some really juicy details out of them. You can get some numbers and some stats, and those are incredible. If you can get people to answer some really detailed testimonial questions and you tell your story of how the project went and they have numbers, that's gold right there. But I like to encourage people that even if they barely said anything to you, but they were happy, but you can go and write down your process, how you worked with them, and hone in on the pieces that you want more of and put those into your case study. That's the key right there. So if you can tell the story of the kind of people that you like to work with, in the process that you like to do, that's going to attract more of those people to you. And that's kind of the key to get included in those case studies, if that makes sense.
Okay. So my mind is like visually looking at like mapping this out and what this would look like. So I want to dive into the specifics on that. I think it would be worthwhile exploring maybe the difference between, or at least your mindset between the difference of a testimonial in a case study, because I would imagine the success story is kind of just code for case study. At least that's kind of how I view it. Maybe not, but yeah. What do you think? What do you feel like the difference is between a testimonial and a case study?
Yeah, I think the difference is, and also I'd like to pull in another piece, which is the difference between a case study and just a portfolio in general, is that you get to control the narrative. So when you have just a portfolio page with like your standard mock-ups on it of, the screens of like websites that you've built and designed, someone can click on those and a potential client, and they go and they're making all their own assumptions about what that was like and what kind of work that you do. Likewise, if you have, somebody's picture and a nice paragraph that they've said, oh, Sarah's awesome to work with. So sweet, so kind. It's like, that's great, but it's not highlighting the pieces that I want emphasized. So I find that it's amazing if you can tie all those together. You have the beautiful visuals. You have some testimony from the client saying that they loved it. You can try to ask them leading questions to get them to tell you like, how did you feel before? How did you feel after? What were your hesitations? Like getting to more in depth and having them answer those things, and then pulling that all together alongside whatever you want to emphasize. So that's the trick with it, is that you want to make sure your case study is telling the story in a way that only the people that you want to work with will be like, oh, that's me.
Resonate with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that terminology, right? Even just there of case study being a story. I didn't really think about framing it like that, but I think if everyone had that mindset, it would make it a lot easier to create an actual case study, like a blog post, if it is a little mini story. That's a great frame to put on that. And the cool thing about a story is like, you could take out the little testimonials that I would imagine would reside in that. Like I'm sure there's like 10 testimonials in a case study, right? Basically.
If you can get 10 testimonials, then that's amazing. You could weave them through your page for sure. And there's those occasions too where you they haven't told you very much, like I was mentioning earlier. So like I was working with a client, helping her write some case studies, and she couldn't get any testimonials out of them, but she could tell the story. She was like, I love working with women in the medical field, and who are, about the big pivots are happening in their business. They're about to go into conferences. So she wanted to create a page that kind of had like little snippets of case study-esque sort of things for each person. So we came up with just little bullet points of like what they needed and what she did for them. And then those like descriptors describing the kind of client that they were, so that she knew she would get more women in the medical field, more women who are at that turning point of about to go and be on conferences. And so even though that was like a small case study, she was telling the story because she couldn't get it out of the client. She just told it to me, and then we encapsulated it into little bullet points.
I didn't even think about the SEO implications of this, about how you could craft a case study, testimonial success story for SEO. I mean, I'm even thinking I'm really diving in more to YouTube this year and really reinvigorating my channel and taking SEO with YouTube very seriously. And it just dawned on me that like I could take a case study, which I've got like a dozen in the works right now that I've actually been secretly working on. I haven't made public yet, but it's going to be, probably by the time this airs, they'll be live. But I'm thinking about doing YouTube videos along with those where, like you said, I control the narrative. And I think anyone has the ability to do this. You could feature your client's website, talk about the challenges, talk about the struggles they had, how you helped, the tools that you implemented. You could SEO the heck out of that thing as well. So I imagine video is probably a nice little add-on with a good success story case study nowadays, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you can get videos, that's amazing. People love to consume that content, even audios. So yeah, I could totally see you having your case study videos on YouTube that people are just finding there, and then connecting that back to a page with like the whole story on it. And you could even have PDF downloads to accompany it for people who are on the go. You could do a whole thing. It could be really fancy and fun.
So fancy and fun, but now, okay, here we go. Now I'm going to do what I always do, and I make this way overcomplicated, and I don't want to, I'm sure we all do that, especially as web designers. We're like, oh, I could do this and this and this and this. Phase one, what would a good case study look like for like, the first version, phase one, the simplified version? Is it just a list of like challenges that the client had, and then the tools we use, the solutions, and where they're at now? What's the basic good template of a case study look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think at its core, there's some pieces that you want to make sure you include, just at minimum. And I like to use something called a PAR statement. I don't know if you've heard of that. It stands for problem, action, resolution. And that was something that I learned way back in my interviewing days, to like come up with these PAR stories and statements to bring into interviews of like, oh, this problem happened with the client and I took these actions and this was how it resolved, or these were the results. So if you can think about that PAR and pull that into whatever format that you're going to use, I think you're off to a good start. And sometimes those formats, the format that you create, you kind of want to use what's easiest for you. So like people in your audience are going to be able to build a landing page. So that's probably going to be amazing for them. But maybe they're in a rush and they're like, can I just make a PDF? Yes, you can make a PDF. You could make a Canva thing that you just link to on your website that people download or they view over there. So whatever you can do fastest, I would say get that up, and then you can perfect it later. But yeah, get that problem, action, resolution, or results at minimum. And if you have numbers, amazing. But if you don't, I do have some ideas about that I can share.
Okay, yes, I do want to hear that. So I was just looking, I was like, what did I say in my business course? I forgot what like acronym or whatever I used. It was very similar. It was problem, solution, result. So it wasn't PAR. It didn't sound as good, but PAR is a nice one to remember. So problem, action, result. Either way, that trifecta of like, there's a challenge, there's a problem, there is your deliverables, your services, and then there's the result. Where are they now? So let's get into the specifics of getting this information. This is what's really tricky, at least for web designers. What I've found is it's really easy to get a testimonial. It's easier to get a testimonial when somebody launches a project because they're all fired up. If you strike while the iron is hot, you'll get a nice little testimonial, but you can't always get the third piece of a result yet because it just launched. So first question for me, when do we come in for the case study? Like, when do we go for the actual result? You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to say like, oh, the results of me. I mean, the result of the design might be nice, but if it's a week after it launches, that's not enough time to get any data about the results of the website. So yeah, I guess the shorthand question is, when is the right time to then pursue like a full case study with results?
Yeah, I would say It depends. Everyone's favorite answer. It depends. I think that you want to ask for the testimonial as soon as possible. At least get those questions answered. And I don't have it in front of me, but I found a list. I learned my list of questions from Jonathan Stark. I don't know if you follow him. He has an awesome website called The Business of Authority, and he has this set of questions that he asks that I used, and like when I did some work for Paige, I sent it over and got like really great answers to all the questions that were in there. So if you can get something like that together early, do that. And then if they are a big name and you don't have any case studies and you want to get something on your site quickly because it's going to help you book more clients, I would say go ahead and make a case study immediately, even if you don't have results or anything, because you know that that's going to help you right now. If you already have a few or you're willing to wait, then maybe come back to them after launch, let them recover a little bit. 6 months, a year later, it's a great time to re-engage with them. They might be like, oh, by the way, I need some more work done. That's an awesome excuse to be like, oh, I was going to feature you in this case
That's
study.
one of my getting client strategies. Or that would be actually a getting more work strategy where, follow up 6 months to ask about a case study, do a call. And then, by the way, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I've been meaning to get with you for like 3 months. I just keep on forgetting. I'm busy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's an amazing time to reach out.
Hold on. Case studies for upsells. I'm going to change the title here. There we go.
Yeah. It's just a good conversation starter. But yeah, I've found though that sometimes even reaching out to them later, some people don't have stats for you, or they don't want to share numbers for whatever reason, or they, aren't good at recording those things. And you can still, even if it's early days and they haven't gotten the results yet, you can still make a case study. And I like to call this big number potential. So if you don't have a big number, can you think of some big number potential? So that would be like, for example, back in the day when I was working in offices, I worked for Microsoft Advertising, and I did a project which ended up in like what was my first case study in life, years ago. I got a project where I was creating some mock-ups for a project that had the potential of making $5 million for the company. They did not get that sale. So we didn't make the $5 million, but I was able to put that into my case study, into my, portfolio addendum thing that I created. And that's still valuable to me, because then people read that and they're like, oh, Sarah's the kind of person we pull in on $5 million projects, sort of like, by association, are leveled up.
You're the $5 million estimate person.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, but how that applies, like for your audience, I would think it might be something you got to get kind of clever. If for like the example I was giving earlier of people who are about to go and, speak at events, they're about to be on stage more. The number potential might be something like, oh, we created this amazing website that would funnel leads into their list and make great sales because they were going to be speaking in front of 2,000 people at an event. So that might be that number potential that you could kind of pull in there. So that's part of the problem. That's probably part of the solution you're creating for them, is that you're giving them the ability to be prepared to get in front of that many people. Does that make sense? Yeah,
totally. And I was just thinking back to a local colleague of mine one time. I remember it was the first taste that I ever had of like a results oriented web designer, because he was just a total pro. And I was still in this phase where I was just excited to get a testimonial that was like, I love my new site design, which is, again, it's fine. But, a business is not going to drop $10,000 or $20,000 on a website by somebody saying, really nice site. They want to know, like, did you help your clients grow their business, or how have you helped? What, even if the numbers are different, there's still something about the results of getting to those. And I remember he didn't have financials for all of his clients, but he did have contact form submissions and bounce rates and just website traffic. So that's another metric too. I imagine you could make your own case study without even talking to the client. If as long as, there's no problem with sharing amount of contact form submissions or calls booked or whatever the call to action is, or even just website stats. If you go from like a 90% bounce rate before the site was redone to 50% now, that's not going to mean that much to every, potential client, but some clients may be like, oh, they may understand how valuable that is. So are those some of the metrics that we could look at to make a case study of our own before doing a call or doing a full interview kind of thing?
Yeah, that had not occurred to me. And that's a brilliant idea, especially for your developers and people getting into the website that have access to the back end, that you could be finding some of that information. That's really smart. Love it.
So getting that information from clients, here's the next big question. How do we do that? Do we do a template email that they give the responses to? And I imagine we got to add some urgency there to say like, hey, can you get this to me by Friday? Otherwise, they're never going to send it back to you. Mm-hmm. Do you do a call and record it and take the transcription? All the above. What are some of the best ways to actually conduct like an interview for a case study?
Yeah, I think it takes a little experimentation because I've tried so many things and then it feels like some things work for a while and then they stop and then I try something different. So you could definitely have a form on your site. It's just like part of your process. Maybe they get an automated email that asks them to do that. You could send just a quick email asking if they're willing and then they reply. I've used a service called Vouch For. I don't know if you've heard of them, where it's they can record little videos answering questions, just on their phone to answer. And I've also heard a technique from a friend of mine. Her name is Jackie Money. She works with Sarah Massey, and she's so smart. She has this whole process where she gets on a call with the client at the 30-day mark after she has delivered. She's like, oh, your support's ending. Let's touch base and see how things are going. And on that call, she says, do you mind if I record and ask a few testimonial questions while we're on the call? And if you don't want to be on video, it could be audio only. And they could say no. But she said that was working amazingly for her. So that's another way that you could do it. I haven't tried that one, but I think
that's really cool. Her last name is Money.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, the dad in me is just thinking of all the possible puns we could for a brand name for that, for sure. Well, it's a money strategy for sure. That is, I think it's a really great way to go. And I have a similar process that I teach in my business course, which is you go for the testimonial immediately when the iron is hot. Mm-hmm. You follow up about a 30-day window after, and then do like a quarterly follow-up or a 6-month follow-up, which yes, leads to additional projects, but that's when you'll start to get some data and some real numbers if they're comfortable with sharing it. Numbers is interesting. And I know you've been in some of these groups with a lot of women entrepreneurs, and I've seen this, and this isn't all the case, but I have seen, I wouldn't say, no, it's not fair to say like a majority of women entrepreneurs, but I guess entrepreneurs in general are just afraid to talk about money. Mm-hmm. And I understand, like, I'm very empathetic towards feeling like, I don't know if I want to talk about business financials or anything, but I have found if you use things like percentages, it just doesn't like no one grasps that. It just doesn't, there's no foundation to say, like, if you say I grew a business by 400%, it doesn't mean anything to me because I have no idea where this business was financially. Mm-hmm. All that to say, the mindset of sharing numbers versus percentages, I will always be respectful of anyone who does not want to share numbers. I totally understand that, but I do try to push for that. Can you share with me your thoughts on that, Sarah, with like numbers, how important they are? And I mean, do you try to get them? Do you have the same mindset that I do, and like how impactful actual real numbers are?
Yeah, I do agree. And I have had endless trouble getting them. I hardly ever get numbers. And so it's forced me to get creative. I think there's another option too, apart from percentages sometimes. So like I worked at T-Mobile years ago, and I remember I did a project and they're having trouble in the purchase path. And I made a design change that allowed them to start selling more accessories with their phones. And it went from 2% to 20%. Mm. And like, that sounds great, right? But that's a 10X, right? So I think if you could get like a 5X or a 10X, sometimes that can sound even better than the percentages. That sounds better to me than 20%, I think.
I know that's a wonderful like frame to put on that idea of Yeah. I mean, even me right there, when you said 10 to 20, it didn't really do anything for me, but 10X is like, oh,
Yeah.
that suddenly makes it more applicable. And it gives you like a vision of what you could do. Like if you're making 100,000, 10X means $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone can times 10.
Yeah, right. Notice how I went with the easy 100,000 there. That's a great way to think about that. What are some of the other tips you have for getting those numbers? And again, to reiterate, I understand if anyone is uncomfortable sharing numbers, there's personal things with that too. If it's like a personal brand or something like that, I'm incredibly open about numbers, but it's helpful for me. So I think it's going to be helpful for people. And it's not out of a braggy or boastful thing. Even when there are good seasons, I had a tough season in 2023. But I was open about that too. Like it does just make it relatable and realistic when somebody sees like one of my students, Lisa, and her husband went from, and I remember this because it's numbers. They went from $38,000 to $78,000 in 1 year. Now, if I would have said, well, it's about 100% increase actually. If I would have said, yeah, they went or 50. No, that's 100%, right? They doubled. So
I'm terrible at math. So
why am I doing this to myself? Anyway, if I would have said 100% increase, then, like that, there's no frame to that, there's no basis of like, well, where do we start from? But 38 to 78, oh my gosh, that's like, now we're getting close to six figures. It makes it more real. So anyway, I say all that to say, I just, at any cost, I try to get real numbers. If somebody is interested in sharing numbers, but a little hesitant, do you have any tips to help them actually get the numbers out to you?
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of tricky. It's I guess it depends on the vibe you're getting from that client. Like you can talk openly about it. I think that there's a few other things you can do to kind of set the stage for that conversation. In my intake form, I ask things like, how many sales are you making now? And how many are you hoping to make in future? So we kind of already get them thinking about it. Cause then I could ask later and be like, oh, are you getting more than those 2 sales per month now? I think you can also in your, if in your process you're asking questions in a form and having them do tasks like pre-work before the project, you can have steps that they need to take of documenting where they are right now. So again, getting them to think about it and like take a minute and be like, how many sales are you getting or how much money are you making right now? And you could put in there, you don't have to put this. If you don't want me to see this, you can just jot it down privately, but make note because I want you to be able to come back to this later and, be able to compare those numbers. And then, I think then it's just a matter of the vibe you're getting from them and how, if they're just not comfortable, then they're not comfortable. But if you're like, hey, this is an amazing stat, something to be proud of, can we say this and see what they say.
I know I've learned with Web Designer Pro, I really try to get real results and real numbers. I've had to catch myself because sometimes if I ask about requesting real numbers, recently I'd said like, or, if you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to worry about it. And then I got the vibe, like they were down to share the numbers, but then I made them second. Like I made them second guess it because I said, or you don't have to share it. So now I'm starting to just say, if you're open to it, would you care to share numbers? I'll be respectful either way, but numbers really do, make it realistic for people. So that's kind of the way I'm trying to go about that now moving forward. I guess too, like if you're following up with people either one-on-one or in a group of clients, you could probably just set the bar right up front and just say, hey, we're collecting some results from clients. We're going to dive into numbers and look at what has worked for you. So that would immediately weed out the people who are uncomfortable sharing numbers. I would imagine if we went about it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Just letting them know up front.
So this idea of like how to do it, interview, call, are there any other we're missing? I mean, I imagine, the email kind of thing with a list of questions or a Zoom call that's recorded. Are there any other tips or software or anything? You mentioned the Vouch for, which I'll make sure we link to. That's a really cool tool. I'd never heard of that. Any other tools or methods for actually doing a case study?
For getting the numbers.
Or for getting
case study?
like for actually conducting the interview. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any others. I think that those are all the ones that I would think of. It's just having the open conversation and letting them feel comfortable. And yeah.
I know. I remember many a time meeting in person and then being like, dang it, I should have recorded that. It was so good. I actually had a guest on the podcast, Sandy, who was on recently, who has been a student of mine for a long time. And we met in person at a web design conference last year. And we were sitting there and she just like told me this story, which I had never heard before, to know anything about. And I literally told her, I was like, all right, Sandy, you're coming on my podcast because we need to have this conversation again publicly. It's so good. Mm-hmm. And it was, first of all, an incredible story, but also a case study. Mm-hmm. I'll share publicly, like, for anyone who doesn't know, a lot of my interviews with students are case studies, mm-hmm. and they often bring me a lot of people into courses in Web Designer Pro. And actually, the ones I've done more recently have been the framework and the basis for the ones I'm working on right now that are going to be released here soon. So interviews, like interviewing people, even if you don't have a podcast or a big platform, really is a great way to go. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, whereas it's more of a just casual chat versus a list of questions, because I found sometimes if you give people questions, they think about it too much and you get those surfacey answers. Whereas when somebody's just chatting, that's when they usually give you like the best stuff, when they just mm-hmm. offhand talk about, the results that they got from your website or how much they appreciate you or how they felt about their business after working with you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Interview versus casual chat?
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point that when you're having a comfy conversation, people can open up and talk to you. An interview can feel more formal, which could be good or it could be bad. Bad, in their eyes. So I think if you're having an interview or you're saying, oh, I want to feature you on my website, then it starts to feel special. And like, oh, I'm going to get featured. I'm going to get, or like for you, if you're bringing students on and like putting it on your podcast, that's exciting opportunity for them to get more visible. There have been occasions in the past where I was working with a client and they didn't have testimonials, and I brought in an outside service provider who goes and gets those for you. And so she would go and ask for feedback from their students. And so that can be nice too, because sometimes people also are sharing things that could be improved and they feel uncomfortable telling you. So you can still be getting some of that, I don't know if you would think of it as negative, but you can get that good feedback to improve what you're doing at the same time as getting constructive
criticism.
Yeah. So having a third party can sometimes be helpful too. But I really like the angle of approaching them and being like, I want to feature you. I want to promote you. And so I would love to share some of the results that we've gotten together. And pretty much everyone we work with wants more visibility. So it's like an easy yes.
I totally agree. Yeah. If you do put it in that context where it's like, I want to feature you, or you're going to have a blog post on my site, or going to have a link for SEO juice back to your site. Mm-hmm, that is a really, really great way to go. And like you said, there's a lot of benefits to that, because it's also not only from an SEO perspective, good for both parties. It's also something that they could share if they're interested. Like it's been really cool for me to have some students on the podcast in the past, and now I see the episode on their website. So I know when people are checking out their site, they might listen to the show or listen to the podcast. So, I will say too, being on the other end of doing a case study, it was honestly a bit of a turning point for me in my career when I was featured on Smart Passive Income, Pat Flynn's website. I had been a course student of theirs, and then I sent in a video testimonial, and then they followed up and asked to do like a case study. And it was a non-recorded interview that we did on Zoom. And she just kind of took the best parts of our interview and typed it up as a story. So to your point from the very beginning, she controlled the narrative. She heard my stuff and then kind of made a story about it, which is still a piece of content that I reference often. But then Pat read that and had me onto the Smart Passive Income podcast to talk about it, which was a big boost in my personal brand and really set a lot of new things in motion. All that to say, doing a case study can also have a ton of benefits. So I don't know what the angle is on that, but for everyone, it's going to be different. Like that was a big podcast. It's one of the top podcasts in the space. So I was like floored. I was like, oh my gosh. I remember being in the kitchen and then telling my wife, like, holy crap, I got invited to do like one of my favorite podcasts. It's amazing. So there is a lot of benefits with doing a case study too. Any tips for doing like being on the opposite side and actually giving a good case study interview?
Yeah. That's such an interesting angle, like being the recipient, like where you're being featured. I could totally see how it makes you feel more professional, more real, like, oh, I'm a big business now. It can be a turning point for you and your confidence. It can give you that opportunity to record that data that maybe you've just been living through it. So you haven't really been stopping and thinking and celebrating and documenting. And then that becomes an asset for you going forward too, because it allows you to tell, again, your story of the success in your business. So I think that's a really interesting perspective, thinking about it from their side. I'll have to think about that more, because that might go into like conversations of convincing people to do them. Yeah. Like it's amazing for you on your side, apart from just the exposure.
I do. I mean, I've learned that with what I do now. I kind of wish I would have done a better job at that with client work, which is to say, I will feature you and I'm going to write content. You could repurpose it. You could do whatever you would like with this. Also, it is amazing to have somebody write about your business. I've actually, some of the best copywriting, I know you're a copywriter yourself. Some of the best copy and messaging I've got came from doing success stories or case studies, because they see your business in a different way than you do. It's the whole, like, you're in the bottle or the label, you can't read the label inside the bottle. But somebody's outside of it and they see you, your business, they get a feel for you and what you do. They can see it in a much simpler way. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's, I was making this way more complicated than I need to. So that's another benefit of having somebody else do a success story on your journey or on a project or something.
Yeah. That brings to mind a thing that I learned years ago when I first left corporate and went into entrepreneurship. And I was like, I'm going to launch a course. And I learned from Mariah Cause, and she taught something called copy stalking, where you, which sounds scary, but it's not, where you're like actually writing down the words that people say. So like, when you get a testimonial and you gathering the case study information, the words that your clients are using about you, it can be really revealing. You can be like, oh, especially if you hear it multiple times, like, oh, multiple people have said that they were so impressed by how organized I was. Oh, I guess I'm an organized person. Now that becomes part of my brand messaging. And, like, oh, the process was so smooth. Oh, I should double down on that. And it can be really, revealing, because you're too much in your head about it.
Vice versa. If you are getting a case study from a client and they say those like catchphrases or keywords, Josh's business was so whatever, organized, or the process was super easy, I didn't feel intimidated. That is gold copy to utilize elsewhere. So I would encourage everyone, I'm sure you would too, like, if somebody is giving you those like responses and results and stuff, look out for those keywords that could be placed on your homepage or in your marketing or whatever that looks like. It's such a untapped potential and gold mine for like really good converting copy. That's not AI. That's not overthought. It's like, it's real, because it's like a genuine reaction.
Yeah. You could practically, depending on the variety of testimonials and things that you've gathered from people, you could probably create a whole sales page just from paragraphs of information that other people wrote. Like, you don't have to rewrite it or rephrase it. You probably shouldn't even, like, use their exact words, and then more people like them are going to be like, oh, this is me too.
Okay. Challenge accepted. I was just thinking, I have so many testimonials and videos on my pro landing page, and I'm like, I don't need to think about a dang thing when it comes to marketing that. I can just literally look at that. I really think about looking at that in the way of like, marketing for email copy or homepage copy or social, whatever it is. That is a genius way to go. Okay. One thing I wanted to ask about, actually, okay, before we get to this one question, portfolio versus case study. You mentioned earlier that could lead to a case study or something. Do you recommend putting a case study as like a link on a portfolio page as somebody sifting through, or do you recommend putting an entire case study on a portfolio page or having part of it? All of the above. What are your thoughts on portfolio versus case study?
Yeah, I think it depends on your situation 100%. Like for the longest time, I had a lot of portfolio pieces where it was like the mock-ups and I didn't have a lot of information from them. But I had the opportunity to make a case study. So I made one case study page and then I had my portfolio and they were separate. But you could totally combine them. I think that they live in harmony. It's just like, what is the best way to showcase the one that you want to feature? If you want more simplicity in your navigation and you just want to have portfolio, and then you get to the portfolio page, maybe you have a few case studies featured at the top, or you have those portfolio pieces that have case studies are first, or you could sprinkle them around. It's one of those things that you might have to sort of test and see, like, oh, nobody's even seeing these case studies. Then you test separating it out. So yeah, I don't have a clear recommendation there. I would say it's just to try a few things out and see what makes sense.
That makes sense. So they do work seamlessly together, because there are people who are going to be sifting through a portfolio and they may be more like design mindset. They want to see something that looks nice, but then maybe if they see case studies, then they know they can go further to then look at results. So that's the double whammy right there. If it looks pretty and you see before and afters, which that was a whole separate thing that it was one of my most popular pages on my website, was the before and afters. And it was just simply before and after. There was nothing else. It was just before and after. No links to case studies, no portfolio on that page. It was just before and after. But those all can work together, or they could all be on a portfolio page that links to before and afters and case studies. What I wanted to ask you was length on these case studies. Because I imagine, we're getting into the realm if it's a story where, I guess it probably is it depends answer, but what's a good case study length? Are we talking 1,000 words, 2,000? That's even that. 2 to 2,500 words. That's going to be that's like a meaty blog post right there. Yeah. So what's the length of a good case study?
Yeah. I feel like if you are a designer or you're big into branding, you're doing a lot of logos and they're using it on their merch, then your case study might be kind of long because you're going to put a lot of images in there. And maybe the copy is a little bit less, where you're telling telling that story just at the top in a condensed section and then showing it, a few details alongside the images as you're going down the page. So
gotcha.
You could go that direction. You could make them into blogs. All your case studies could be blogs, and then people can filter and search for their niche if you'd like to do it like that. I think if you have a bunch of landing pages that are all 2,000 words long, plus a bunch of images, that might be a little heavy. Maybe in those cases, you want to have a PDF with more detail. I've seen people put together PDFs with multiple case studies in them, and then a little bit about them at the beginning, and then a little bit of a sales pitch at the end. So you could be like, it's an opportunity, download my case studies if you want to work with me. And then they review it there offline. You could have so many case studies that you've gathered over the years that you write a book and you publish it on Amazon, and then you just on your page on your site, be like, want to read my case studies? There's my book. Go grab it.
Yeah. Package it nicely, absolutely. I love that idea, Sarah. I didn't even think about making it a book per se, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Also, I'm so glad you mentioned the thing about putting a call to action or a lead gen or something in there, because case studies are it's like an introvert's dream to marketing because you don't need to sell. You don't need to think of a bunch of marketing copy. You don't need to put any scarcity or urgency. You could in a call to action, but case studies are one of the best sales vehicles without selling, because you're just sharing what works. And more specifically, like I've always taught for a while that you don't need to sell, you can educate. But often when you're educating potential clients, you're giving ideas and things that are probably going to work, most likely going to work. A case study is like, this actually worked. Like, here's the project before, this is what we did. If you can get results in there, real numbers, not percentages, awesome. And do you want us to work with you? Here's where to go. Book a call or sign up for this or whatever it is. So it really is kind of like the easiest way to market without selling, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, that's one of my favorite things to put on social media is social proof, testimonials, portfolio pieces, case studies, because then you're there. It's like, oh, here's this interesting story with a pretty picture. You want to go read about it? And then somewhere in there, big fan of transitions, like writing so many sales pages over the years. You got your story, and then you're like, and if you need help with this too, you know, this is how you can work with me, and then have that call to action. It's a missed opportunity if you don't put that. So at least at the bottom of your case study page. So
good point. And look, never too late. If you've got 10 case studies on your site right now or success stories, you heard it here. Go over there, add a nice transition, call to action, free lead gen, whatever it is, free consult call, whatever it is. Add that. That's the beauty about blogging, by the way. I'm learning that too. Like one thing I have on my to-do list this year is to go through my top pages in my site and look at where can I offer like a free lead generator or sign up or call to action. So you could do the same thing with case studies. Yeah. Gosh, it's such a great way to go. AI in case studies. Is there a place for this? I am so, I feel for copywriters because AI is such there's ways you can use it. I know a lot of people are turning to AI completely for copy, but it's already so overdone. Like, I can sniff out an AI paragraph in a heartbeat now. For case studies, this seems like it's so personal. When and where could AI be used in case studies?
That's a great question.
Summaries, transcripts, interview questions. I imagine you could prompt ChatGPT for some good prompts, at least maybe questions.
I think that's a great idea. Or you could, like, I wouldn't want AI to help me write my case study page necessarily, because I wouldn't want to get confused about what the client said. Yeah,
and then you'd get like the unveiling the key to success, like the typical, all right, this was so, Chat GPT.
Yeah. But I think you could definitely have AI help you. You could even like feed, I'm guessing, I haven't tried this, but you could feed the AI a bunch of case study pages and be like, summarize the 10 things that I'm best at, or the 10 ways I serve clients, or make 5 headlines that could lead to, someone wanting to visit this page. You could also use AI just to, help with copy editing. I don't know. I'm still new at exploring what AI can do and what AI can do for me as a copywriter. So apart from like playing around in Chat GPT and trying to make it not sound robotic, these are all just ideas off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, they're great though. Yeah, especially I think when it comes to a like refining standpoint, if it can help, reduce some of the filler or reduce some of the unneeded kind of sentences, make it a little bit tighter, make it a little more thrift or brief. I think that is definitely where AI could help. I would personally use it for prompts and for refining. That's basically what I use AI for anyway. I'm getting away from title creation, because now all the titles, anything with a colon in there is, that wasn't revealing the hidden secrets to case study success, something like that. Yeah. No, we're going to call this something human and real.
Yeah.
A lot of good points in this one, Sarah. I think the idea of framing it as a story is a key. The difference between testimonials and portfolio pages and how to include these in portfolios is a biggie. We talked a lot about the length and how to conduct interviews, both written, video. some really good tips you shared about testimonials and how to actually get those from clients and when to get them. So there has been some gold covered in this one. Very timely for me personally, because I'm, going to be working on this as I wrap the ones that I have kind of sitting on the sideline. So one final question for you. But before we get to that, Sarah, where should people go to find out more about you? You have a challenge too, I think. Like, where should everyone go from here to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me at sarahdesign.com. That's Sarah with an H. Because even though I'm not offering design services, it's still a part of my life. And I've owned that domain for more than 20 years. So I'm never letting it go. And at the bottom of the site, there's links over to my social media, because I do hang out on Instagram, and I'm spending more time on LinkedIn. And yes, I kind of made a name for myself around sales pages. So I have a sales page challenge. If people are new to writing their first sales page, it's at sarahdesign.com/challenge. And that'll walk you through getting your MVP sales page up and running and, making it a little less scary so you can get out there and launch your stuff.
Awesome. Well, we'll have those links. We'll have those linked. I was just going through your case studies page on your website. Yeah, you've got some awesome ones here. I really like the one for Paige Brunton, which it looks like you're going to be doing one for Shannon Mannern here too. So I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah.
So you've got project, problem, prep work, intensive day, handoff, and days to complete. That's interesting amount of time that it might be to complete a project. That's a cool little metric that some client, that's one of the common questions. How long does this take? You can address that in a case study. That's great.
Yeah. And I include that specifically because I had some bigger projects, but I offer VIP days for the most part. So that helps to kind of set the stage for this is done in a day or done in a half day or 2-day intensive or something like that.
I am totally going to use that as a metric for my case studies, because I have a lot of questions that I get before somebody joins, particularly Web Designer Pro in my community. They're like, how long will it take till I can go full time? And I'm like, there are so many variables. I have no idea. I don't know. But if I can have some case studies of examples of like, this person was brand spanking new, this is where they were at in life, this is where they got to in 10 months or 12 months, then yeah, you might be around here. Could be this time frame if you're willing to work for it. This person who had way more financial responsibility built it up on the side and did this, and it took, maybe it took double the amount of time, whatever it looks like. I didn't think about using the time frame as a metric there. So I think I'll be referring back to your case studies a lot as a basis to help me out. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Final question here, Sarah. Where should somebody get started? In the essence of, keeping it simple, we covered a lot of things that could, again, make this a very complicated type of project for people. I would say, this isn't going to be something you're doing every week. You're not going to be doing case studies every week. You could batch them. What are your tips, or maybe what's a tip that you have for somebody just to get started if they're thinking about doing their first one or getting their first case study from a client?
Yeah, for sure. I think, first of all, don't put pressure on yourself that you're going to have 100 case studies or every client is going to be a case study. Like I'd say maybe shoot for 3, but just shoot for 1, for starters. Like be like, I'm going to make 1, know that you're going to improve it. The first time through is probably not going to be the final version. And just write down what you did, how the project went, and focus on what you want more of. So in terms of time, how long did it take? If you're someone who loves to work collaboratively with clients and over 6 to 8 weeks and back and forth with sketches, include that in there, focus on that. If you're someone that wants to, meet, have a kickoff, and then they don't talk again until you reveal the final stuff at the end, then talk about how fast and easy that is. And it's just 2 quick calls for the client. Because if you know exactly what you want more of and you talk all about it in your case study, then the people who like that are going to want to book with you. So the person that wants hands-on when you don't, they want the 6 to 8 week project and you're like, I do it over a week, they're going to be repelled, and that's good. You want the people who love that to be attracted and be like, yeah, they're the one for me.
Case studies to attract your ideal clients. That's some good stuff. Great message to end off on. Sarah, thank you for your time. Really enjoyed chatting with you. This was very enlightening for me and inspiring. And gosh, I'm pumped now. I'm going to try to turn my mind off here with all these ideas, but definitely going to be referencing your site. I recommend everyone definitely as well. Go to sarahdesign.com and then sarahdesign.com/challenge. That's the link for the challenge, right?
Yeah. It's free and they can binge it all at once. So
boom, there we go. All right, Sarah, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to head off and get going on my case studies.
Thanks, Josh. I can't wait to see what you come up with.
All right, friends. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one again. Case studies are an absolute goldmine for continuing to get awesome web design clients that, like Sarah eloquently put here, are attracting the right type of clients. Like a case study can bring you the right type of client. So there's so many reasons. I encourage that you really take case studies and success stories to heart. I'm doing this for my business right now, and I'm reminding myself I don't need 100 case studies. I can do a few to start out with. Half a dozen are going to be more than enough. So same for you. Even you get one's enough to get going with. So I can't wait to see yours. Leave a comment if you would when you get your case studies up, or even just one case study. Go to joshhall.co/317. Leave me a comment. I read all the podcast comments. I'd love to check yours out. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode, friends.